The One of the homeless advocates reminded us they're here because they feel safe. They feel safe in this space between Cosgrove and the church. The original people who were homeless and came and camped, um, is you should feel fortunate in a way because they're here because there's a comfort level. Christmas night is the night to be filled with angels, but it's just St. Peter's because it has had a troubled history. It was closed for a few years, and it has reopened. But a pastor um, designed the space with a vision of, and I think it's true that the space forms a community that worships in the space. So the church itself forms a community. St. Peter's, the chairs facing one another with wonderfully light, bright, stained glass that just fills the place with light on a sunny day. And facing one another is very monastic. So it builds community in a very unique way when you're facing one another. The point where some people feel uncomfortable. They do not like that. It's called oppositional seating, and they don't care for it at all, but it's for us, it's much more comfortable. Friars, monks, those who pray in the common, um, and then to move from the place where we hear the word into the sanctuary for the Eucharist.
And you're smack dab in the middle of the biggest homelessness in the city. You know, when I was at church one day, a homeless man came in and you folks gave him a bag of stuff and I thought, "Oh, well, that's awesome," because it's a lot of folks don't know what to do with the homeless.
It's not blaming for the situations that are there, 'cause the situations are very challenging, and you're there for the grace of God, go all of us. It'd be very possible for many of us to be on the street. Um, like last night, we had, in one room, we had a young adult Bible study going on. And in the room I was in, I was working with a couple doing marriage preparation. And right through the middle of the doors walked two guys. They saw our door was open. Can we sleep here tonight? I said, I can't let you do that.
Yeah,
I can get you something, but I can't leave you in the building overnight.
right.
When we were challenged by a homeless camp in front of the Cosgrove Center, it became a real mess with drugs and prostitution and the whole thing going on. The One of the homeless advocates reminded us they're here because they feel safe. They feel safe in this space between Cosgrove and the church. The original people who were homeless and came and camped, um, is you should feel fortunate in a way because they're here because there's a comfort level, and that comfort level is safety is from Cosgrove, the Catholic Charities building, and from the church.
Yeah,
And ultimately, we've not had any significant issues. We've had
right.
some interesting people come in and add some flavor to the mass of what was going on. But all in all, it's a process of getting most of our parishioners come from the suburbs, way out of the suburbs, and it's how to draw them into participating and helping with the poor without being afraid, without casting judgment. And just I now watch they grab those bags. Oh, Father, there's somebody here at the door. Well, you know where they are. You get them, and you hand them out and take care of that as best we can.
I had, my time when I really wasn't I didn't wanna be bothered by the homeless people. I don't wanna be approached, and I would be very matter of fact, like, "You don't I don't have anything for you, back up, I don't wanna be bothered." And, after I became a Christian man, like, officially, God started to work on that. I, had this homeless man that used to sort of be walking by my business, and I would say hello. Yeah. He would say hello to me. I'd say hello to him. I saw him a couple of times. And then I remember one Christmas being at home, horrible snowstorm, and I remember literally just crying, thinking about that poor man being out on the street. And it was like so uncharacteristic of who I was, that I was a little taken aback by it. And uh, just it's sort of a long story, but I'll keep it brief. But I ran in, I didn't see him for several months, and I was thinking about him a lot. And one day I was sitting in my car talking on the phone, and he was walking by, and I rolled down my window and I said, "Hey," and he comes over, and I talked to him, and he said, "You should come and visit me at the homeless shelter." And I said, "Okay, I guess I could do that." I just had his first name, and I went in the office and I called the homeless shelter and I said, "This is so crazy because it's like," I said, "What time are visiting hours?" And they said, "Sir, this is a homeless shelter. People come here to sleep and eat. We don't have visiting hours." And I was like, "Well, how would I get in touch with a gentleman over there?" You just have to find him on the street, or you could volunteer. And I said, "Okay, well, what would that entail?" I mean, you have to talk to, you know, the person in charge of that. And I had had this run-in with the name Lydia 5 days in a row right before that. And it's, the Christian convert. I had a dream about it. It was in a podcast. I sat down at church and I introduced myself to the young lady next to me, and her name was Lydia. And I'm on this call about at the home with the homeless shelter, and they said you could volunteer. And I said, "Okay, well, who would I talk to about that?" They said Lydia Bailey. And so I was just floored by that because that was all in the span of a week. It was all Lydia all the time. And so um I managed the computer room over there, and then the pandemic came. And then after the pandemic, Lydia let me do a Bible study. And it was mostly me and one or two or three guys with masks on. And I sat across the table from homeless men crying with them. And my whole thing has been changed, about how I feel. I'm not afraid of them. I have compassion, and I worry about their lives now, as opposed to I don't want to be bothered by you.
And so much of that is encounter, and be willing to encounter, and the power of a name. I found very much asking the person, like, in a conversation, just very simply, "What is your name?" And that, offers the other person a moment of dignity.
Yeah.
So that they're each person, then they wanna know my name.